Hey guys, my name is John Park, and welcome to the Assassins demo. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for being here today and just really kind of supporting me on this journey. Um, well, I guess we'll get started. So here I have an image of painting done by Sargent, and typically for this type of painting, I really wanted to get some sort of color, um, and and this is I treat this more as like an undertone kind of kind of experiment where I took the liberty of using a master painting and just really trying to you know uh, abstractly extract some of the colors and try to see if I can see unique opportunities to really find my a really nice lighting scenario and color arrangement here. Um, so I'm just kind of selecting through my brushes here, and my goal here is really to just kind of blur and utilize some of the colors in here. And obviously, there's a lot of variety and mixes of color in here. So typically this is a good technique to use for those of you who haven't done underpaintings, or if you want to have some sort of a starting point. I love working this way. I think it's very experimental, and there's a lot of happy accidents. So I'm just doing a couple things here where I'm obviously trying to play with the values a little bit, and at this phase, to be honest, I actually don't know where I'm going to go with the image. The only thing I do know is I have an assassin, so I'm just kind of blocking out the silhouette here, and I'm using a um, round brush with opacity, and it's pen pressure, so um, I'm able to kind of control my edges, and I'm just kind of defining my edges with a hard brush. And all I really want to do is just really kind of solidify a good pose, a good shape, and just start to think about some of the elements that my assassin is going to look like. Whether it's holding a sword. So I'm just quickly lassoing in, what could potentially be a sword or a weapon of some sort. Right now, it kind of looks like a dude with a cane. So, um, but I typically like to work this way just because it helps me to kind of separate the figure from the background. Now, there's kind of a different method where you know when you're designing the silhouette, you're able to kind of justify a lot of the internal details just by knowing that you have a really good, confident exterior design, exterior silhouette. So instead of me just kind of randomly figuring out my character design, blending with the background, this is a really great way to kind of have a lot of control and a lot of separation. And you guys will find that I'm able to edit and kind of make a lot of changes needed to make this image work. So I like to keep my layers fairly separated and clean, just for the sake of editing. Working professionally, keeping all your layers is very mandatory. Only because you have to make changes. But when it comes to your own personal art, guys, I mean, don't feel obligated that you have to create so many layers. I typically like to work in very few layers. It's less to think about, and so yeah, you guys will just you guys will find your own like rhythm here. But yeah, I'm just kind of like trying to figure out a good shape on this guy. Anatomy has always been a really tricky thing for me because I guess I'm more of a environment guy, and I really wanted to share my character design process with you guys. So you guys can see, like, I completely scrapped this thing, right? After working on it for about 10-15 minutes, I just decided to start a brand new layer and even just think about the idea of what would the character do in this type of scene, right? We kind of have this abstract kind of orange kind of scenery. It has a very moody kind of setting, but the question is, what does our character do? Is a character going to be standing backwards, kind of looking away in the distance? Is a character hiding? Is a character posed in a way that kind of sells a narrative or sells a story of the type of assassin that this character is? So you can really tell a lot about, the character just by the gesture of the pose. So just still working in my silhouette here. And to be honest, I find that this is probably one of the most important steps of designing. Whether you're designing a vehicle, or whether you're designing a prop or a weapon, or even an environment sometimes, you have to make sure that, the graphic design is pretty spot on, right? So I'm just going to start solidifying some of the key parts of, the stance here. Just kind of working in, just making sure that, it's a good center of gravity. And I'm just thinking like it'd be cool if the character had like a really long drape, like asymmetric drape or something, and maybe just kind of, casually holding a weapon, because all of my Assassin series, I always like to kind of pose them with kind of like more of a melee weapon. And this is kind of like more of those like a Reaper kind of blade or some sort, like close range assassin blade or something. So I'm just kind of refining the shoulders a little bit here, and I'm imagining that the hoodie will probably be a little bit, not too tight, but large enough so that it kind of gives the character a very ominous vibe. And I'm just gonna give it more of a cloak, so a lot of fabric on the character. So what I'm doing here is I just quickly duplicated the layer, and just to kind of give more of opacity, and I'm just blotching it just a little bit of color. I just want to see what kind of color palette that I can use to really get this thing started off. And when I start painting, I never really know. So I just switched it up, and I wanted to see what I can get just by sticking in a photo. This is a photo of a character armor that I found from Game of Thrones. It was a close-up of one of the character walking in frame, and I just thought, dude, this thing is so awesome. It has really cool materials, really cool, it has a really cool palette. So just really got me going in the right direction. So I'm just kind of riffing off of what's already here, and I'm just starting to think about my own design, right? Obviously, this really helped me as, I really piggybacked off of this right here. So I picked the colors, and that helped me to define the robe here. So I'm just painting that in. And obviously I'm not the best at faces, so I try to just think about the graphic shape in terms of where is the shadow. So I'm just gonna block in the shadow of the character first, and maybe even just get a little bit of the robe, overlapping onto the to the right shoulder there. Maybe a little of the robe behind the character there. And I really wanted the robe to be asymmetric in the front, just to kind of give it a different look, Pull some of the darks, try to get some of the folds to read. And one thing I noticed is that really good designs of fabrics is that the folds are they're complex, but they're also very graphic and simple to read. So I'm trying to keep this thing really simple and graphic as I possibly can. So I'm not going to get into too much detail just yet. And you guys notice that I'm working from a certain distance, right? So I'm trying to keep checking my character, check all the values, check all the graphics, the overall composition of all the shapes, and just the materials that I use, make sure that it reads at this distance. A common mistake that I always make is, I'll get so excited about the design that I'll zoom in. What happens is that when you zoom in, you just start to, it gets really defocused in terms of where your focal point is, and your image starts to get really muddy. So that's something that, I would highly recommend working from a distance, and then once you're at a good point, then you can zoom into your image. So I'm just gonna start filling in the rest of the boot here, in the bottom section of the character, just to kind of see if the materials read right. You know, like I felt like I had an issue with the value of the cloth or the fabric, because I didn't want it to be too bright, but I didn't want it to be too dark that you would get confused with the shadow of the character and the value of the fabric. So just gonna go ahead and just kind of start extending and erasing a little bit of the photo here. And the photo was just such a great start, you know, like color palette wise, it was everything that I was looking for. But I obviously don't want to keep all the photo elements. I mean, that's just kind of no fun, right? So it's gonna kind of work in the side of the character here, the side garment. Maybe it's like some sort of undergear that's kind of being overlapped by the front. Just gonna refine and darken it up a little bit back here. Add just a little bit more dark value here so we can really get the separation of the feet. Just to get a little bit of, you know, more shapes and just kind of understand the pose. Define some of the edges here. Start blocking in the hand, you know. And I love this part of the sketch because I have this nice loose sketch, and you know, when you add too many details, it starts to really kill it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just brighten it up. And I have this layer on color dodge. And color dodge is great when you're trying to get a nice lighting effect. And so I just used a simple soft brush, and all I'm doing is I'm just editing out the areas of where shadow is going to come into play. So just from this read, I can tell that my character, my lighting scenario, I'm very, very happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and just blend this together. I've obviously created a new layer behind the character just to kind of soften and blur out kind of the background elements and all the details here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a little bit more dark. And you notice by adding in that dark, the value of the robe really pops out. So our eye is able to justify and see that the robe or the garment is actually being lit very well. So I'm just going to use some of my custom brushes here. Just to kind of break up the ground a little bit and give it just some sort of receding background. But, you know, this piece isn't about the background, so I'm going to keep it loose. Try to keep nice broad strokes here. And don't forget to save. Always gotta save. I've had demos where it's literally crashed on me, and it's just the most heartbreaking experience. And you literally feel like you just don't want to draw. I mean, once that happens, you just want to step away and just screw painting, screw drawing. This sucks. Why am I even doing this today? So always remember to save, guys. Alright, so adding just a little bit of the dark back there, thinking that I can kind of extend the robe just a little bit here to see how that looks. Yeah, it's always so hard to get the lasso to work in your favor, you know. Blend it in a little bit. I think I just decided to kind of take out that shape because it just was not working, and I think I liked it to be clean and just kind of emphasize on the hand a little bit more. So just go ahead and just kind of start refining elements of the chest a little bit. I'm gonna pull the straps, paint it, thinking that, you know, maybe this lower guard here can be some sort of unique design. Maybe made of like some sort of forged brass or some sort of you know, tinted metal. So I'm gonna pull this part here and kind of give it more of like a slight, you know, leather look. So like, you know, it's always really cool when characters have a lot of depth with different materials and different costuming. So let's just kind of make that separation here. Just give it a little bit more of a crease. Go back to my robe here. My cloak. I keep calling it a robe. I don't know why. It's like it's It's not even like a bathroom robe or anything. Just gonna use a lasso tool here, and I'm just going to use one of my brushes and angle it to give it just a nice shadow crease here. Because I want to make sure that there's, there's creases and, it kind of feels like it's draping across the chest. So I'm going to just add a little bit of a shadow here. And I used the brush and I turned it vertically so I can get a nice straight edge. And I'm just going to erase away. So I kind of get that nice crease and overlap. Just add a little bit of a defined edge. So the left shoulder is kind of blending into the background. So I'm trying to find a way where I can really kind of pop that up. So I'm working in my lighter values here. And I want to see how much lighter I can get down there. And is it orange? Probably not, just because the nature of the lighting scenario and the material, it's probably not going to get that orange. And it might just confuse itself with the background. So I might just pop in a little bit of a lighter red here, but it's starting to look a little washed out. So, one thing is, don't be afraid to try it. Make that mark and see how it looks. You don't have to always feel like everything that you do is a full commitment. And that's kind of the beauty of what I love about painting in Photoshop is you really don't know how good it'll look until you try it out, right? Because honestly, when I do these paintings, I have no idea what in the heck I am doing. Everything is all trial and error, and it's just really, for me, a test. I'm just constantly being, put in a spotlight and really problem solving on every angle. Making sure that I understand lighting, making sure that I understand anatomy, and making sure that I know the differences between, warm and cool relationships. And just knowing, it's such a struggle and it's a battle, but it's kind of the beauty of painting and being an artist, really. So you get to constantly be challenged by all these different scenarios with your own image. So I'm going to add just a little bit of like a detail here. I'm thinking like it might be cool to add kind of like a buckle of some sort or a strap on the side here. So I'm just using some texture brushes that I have, and those give me a nice variety of shapes and textures. So they're just really just kind of gives me a nice like range of color variations and textures, and it's just really good for like placing in color instead of using photos all the time. So that's the pattern stamp tool. Really, really effective. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put in just a little bit more detail on the neck area so it doesn't just bleed into just a shadow. And go ahead and just kind of really figure out what the front of this is going to look like. This is always a tricky part. My brain literally stops here, And anytime you guys feel like you have a roadblock, and I do too, all the time, please be sure to just stop, use some photo reference, and just see what you can do differently. Yeah, I had to just kind of periodically stop here and look at my photo reference and see what I can do to make the image better, to make the costuming better. So I'm gonna add some, maybe some folds. I'm just trying it out to see if it helps. It's a little strange. Thinking that, it might help to make it darker here just to really separate this piece from the side hip. And maybe just the cloth on the left, I think it might help to really pop that out more. But I'm just going to go here and really try to resolve this piece. I mean, it was definitely challenging because, I want to show that it has not necessarily a skirt, but just something that like some sort of garment that drapes halfway down the knee. and I wanted to give it this layered look. So I'm just trying to indicate just some more fabric behind the first piece. So adding in a darker value here. And just give it a slight, you know, drape look so that, you know, we have the folds. But I want to definitely not get brighter than the shadow. Just kind of refine a little bit of that edge. And maybe just some of the straps kind of going down. So I'm going to continue to extend this centerpiece here. You know, again, we talked about it being kind of more of a metallic material. And so I think it might be cool if I made this thing symmetrical and you can see the other side. But I just gotta be careful with the shape because, you know, I definitely don't want it to, you know, make it look like it's kind of like this, you know, metallic underwear, you know. So let's just kind of break it up just a little bit. Make sense of how the strap goes around the waist there. Gonna go ahead and refine the edge just a little bit here. Lasso it out. Just give it a cleaner edge. Put a little bit of that rolling shadow there. And using lasso tools, guys, is such a great and effective way to get highlights, you know, without having to really go off the page here. So that's just even that mark right there really gives it a nice economical look. And, you know, everything stays within the line, you know. So I'm gonna kind of give it like a more of a metallic look, right? So already that's starting to look pretty good. You know, maybe we can extend it down a little bit further. I'm thinking, what if I create a new layer and I lasso down another piece just to kind of get away from that weird underwear look. And it might be cool if it was more of like a metallic, kind of like a mid guard or something. I'm not too familiar with the armor terms, and I do apologize for those of you who really do want to learn about this kind of stuff. I'll definitely be sure to kind of brush up on my terms here. But I knew from just looking at some of my photo reference and just some other examples that, you know, there's so many different versions of armor, and how you can actually explore and create different looks for the character. And it's always a healthy balance for a character design to have, you know, multiple materials, you know, both on the fabric and also both on like metallic armor pieces too. You don't want your character to feel too armored and have nothing but just metal armor on the character, and you don't want it to be fully, you know, just have nothing but fabric, because it gets really, really boring, you know. So it's an important thing to do, you know, when you're trying to come up with a little bit more variety. So let's go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this, and I typically like to duplicate my image just because, you know, we've already established the silhouette, and what I'm going to do is, you know, I'm going to continue to work just on the details now, but I like duplicating the character layer just so that I don't have to worry about layers. And that's something that always slows me down, is having to manage all the layers. And so if you guys feel that, you know, that slows you down as well, feel free to just periodically make a copy merge of everything. You know, merge it, copy it over into a group folder, and then just duplicate that. And so just you can have a compressed, you know, single layered version of all the layers that you have. You know, it just saves the trouble of having to, you know, find out exactly if you're on the right layer or not. Because I'm not the most organized person when it comes to Photoshop, so it's incredibly hard for me to work that way. So again, I'm just going to switch back to my broad brush here and just kind of darken up some of these areas. And now I'm trying to get the readability, and it's not looking right. The light and shadows are really tricky here, because I had a nice light source on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and just go back to my brush here, and I'm thinking of just trying to give a little bit of pattern on the side here, just a little bit of a texture there, and see how that looks. I think that might help break it up, you know, that this is a different material from what's in front. So I'm going to grab the smaller bit. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, I think I'm going to just kind of angle a little bit more and just kind of indicate that it has a slight texture. All right, cool. Let's kind of move on to the shoulder part here. You know, and I'm thinking that it's going to have a traditional kind of looking shoulder armor. So it's going to be plated, and I got to make sure that, you know, these little sections make sense, that it can fully articulate, and it's not just blended into nothing. So let's just try to make sure that that's clean and defined. Add a little bit of a highlight here. I'm thinking that, you know, and you really need to bring that out again. So let's just cross this section out. I think it's causing too much of like a distraction just graphically. I want to keep it simple, but, you know, not overdo it, right? It's so easy to overdo a design by adding way too many details. So I'm going to go ahead and use a simple circle brush to kind of give these little, you know, segmented sections on the bicep. I'm going to make a selection here because I want to get a little bit of a highlight. So I'm going to go and make a selection, use my chalk brush. I just color sample the background a little bit, and I'm just going to give it a slight kick. Just kind of see how that looks, you know. It's not too bad, but I definitely wanted to give it that same material, kind of that metallic copper look. Go ahead and give this a little bit of a shadow pass and a breakup here. Just going to start working on the areas of the knee. Maybe I'm thinking, you know, I can have some sort of, I don't know if I want an armor plated knee or if I want boots. Again, I gotta put it in there and see how it looks, and then make sure that it feels good before I commit to it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and define the feet a little bit because it's floating. Let's go ahead and just kind of make some sort of indication of some kind of design. So I don't know yet, but I know that I want a breakup between the leg and the feet. So it's going to go ahead and kind of make a mark there. Yeah, it's always tricky to kind of get all the pieces on your character design to work cohesively, you know? Because one area might work really well and other areas might just fall apart really easily. So let's just go ahead and just kind of darken that down. And it's a total cheat that I just did there. I feel like I completely just kind of ran away from the problem. So I want to see if I can just kind of extend this piece. Maybe this will help resolve that issue of having to define the legs more. Thinking that, you know, the garment can be a little bit more longer and it can come down more. Maybe just add a little bit more separation here. See how that looks. It's definitely helping. It's giving it depth, but I'm afraid that, you know, it's complicating it. So maybe if I just continue to kind of make more creases. It might give it that nice readability here. So let's just make a darker crease, and I don't know if that's working, so let's just go ahead and take that out. Crease in the center. You know what? Yeah, maybe I found that this part was a little unstructured just by comparison to everything else. And I always find myself kind of bouncing around. If there's one area that's not working for me, I won't sit there and just try to dwell on it. I'll try to bounce around to another section of the costume or of the character, just so that I can come back to it with a fresh perspective. And also, oftentimes, it really helps to just kind of step away from your artwork too. You know, and it just helps to, you know, just look at something else, come back, look at it again, and see what you could have done differently. So I think at this point, I'm really trying to figure out, you know, what is the best solution for that under piece. And you know, there's obviously other areas that I can, you know, enhance. And I know I can add a little bit of a crease and a shadow here by the hoodie. Maybe a little bit of a crease or indication of the folds back here by the head. And all the colors I'm picking, I'm trying to pick within, you know, the colors I have represented on the painting. So if I need to go darker, I'm going to make a color selection and go down in value. If I'm going to go brighter, then I'm going to pick somewhere on the image itself, see if I have a brighter value. I'm going to just switch the brush a little bit and just try to give it a nice textural break here. Add some more details on the armor a little bit. And I find that, you know, at this stage, it's pretty close to what I'm trying to go for. Now it's just all about refining the edges, right? Because we've established our silhouette, we've established our general lighting source. Now it's just really trying to get all of the pieces to read. So I'm trying to work in the shoulder a little bit, because it's closest to the chest, and the chest and the face are going to be my main focal point of the character. So I'm just going to lighten up the top part of the hoodie and just indicate some sort of skylight. So I'm going to color pick it just a little bit. Give it a nice transition skylight coming on top. Give some, you know, highlights, a little bit of a top edge on the shoulder elements. Just gonna go ahead and just start refining the arm a little bit. And I'm thinking that it might be cool to have maybe like a wrist guard, so maybe something that kind of follows the language of that midsection. So I'm gonna go a little bit more pointier there. Just gonna switch over to my brush, and now I feel like I can kind of really see how the character is holding this weapon. Maybe it's more of like a, maybe it's more, you know, grabbing it on. Add some little bit more definition towards the section of that button there. And it's starting to become a really high focal point, because I want to draw the eye in. Add just a little bit of detail on the midsection, and I'm thinking of maybe just some engravings, you know, so it doesn't just look like plain metal, but enough detail so that it doesn't distract away, because this is a more of a simple piece. So I'm just gonna add some, you know, some little decorative lines to kind of help really give this idea that this is this is some sort of like royal, high-paid assassin or something. You know, not kind of like your typical ninja assassin or you know, medieval assassin where they're kind of covered all in kind of, you know, run down looking materials, but maybe this guy's a really high-paid mercenary of some sort. So I'm working the hands a little bit. Start defining, you know, the character and how the character is holding and grasping onto that weapon. Paint the handle. Just gonna go ahead and just pop this over here. Just start defining the handle a little bit more. And maybe the handle, you know, is catching a lot more light. So it's just justification for me to be able to really pop that out more. Just gonna go ahead and work a little bit more shadow on the shoulders there. And thinking that the inside of the hoodie can get some bounce light. You know, I'm not too sure because it just looks like a dark void, right? When you look at it, I mean, there's something really cool about it being ominous, but maybe I can start indicating a face. So you see that I'm going to my handy, you know, handy chalk brush, my texture 06. I'm trying to see if I can paint in just some sort of feature of the face. I don't want to get too exposed because this guy is still an assassin, so you know, I really want the character to look more ominous, and maybe just to have you know, keep the whole concept of the mask of some sort. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of doodle in maybe something where the mask is getting slightly underlit, you know, but because it's not being hit by direct light. And it's funny how, like, by putting a mask on a character, it instantly looks like Doctor Doom or Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know, it just has that kind of iconic, you know, familiar read to the audience. You know, they're gonna look at it and say, "Oh, that reminds me of that." You know, because I mean, how many characters or how many things do you see out there that have a hoodie or some sort of ninja mask, right? Especially the mask. The mask portion is so reminiscent of what I remember when I grew up watching Star Wars, Ninja Turtles, and even growing up, you know, reading and looking at, you know, Marvel comic books. So I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of refine the mask a little bit. I'm trying to figure out, you know, at this size, I don't know if you know, if I should add a little bit more of a higher mask, or maybe the character's looking away, sideways. I'm thinking it might be cool if the mask was, you know, it still had that really aggressive language to it. Start indicating just a little bit of the eyes, maybe here, a little bit here. Just start working in just some of the details around the eye. You know, obviously the eye is dark, right? So I'm not going to really get anything. I'm not going to, you know, render out the eyeball, but I definitely want the viewer to look and just to kind of interpret or see where the face is located, or where the eye is potentially located. So let's go here. Let's just duplicate it again. Duplicate it. Have one in a group, and all I'm going to do is I just collapse so I can work right back onto the painting again. So anytime that I mess up, I'm just going to go back to the group, and just as I know that I have my latest saved version, I feel more confident to be able to make adjustments, you know, on this image. So I'm just going to go ahead and add just a little bit more definition to the background. Actually, let's create another layer here, and just I'm looking at the mask again. I really feel like it needs to pop, right? Because it's such a subtle read that I'm definitely getting a lot of lost information there. So maybe if I just pull out that element again, and it starts to feel okay, you know, but I definitely still want something cool, you know, and it's all about the shape. Notice how I'm even the mask itself, I'm trying to figure out a good silhouette. So I'm going to round off the area where the cheek might be and give it a little strap of some sort. That might be kind of cool. Darken it down just a little bit. I turn my brush mode into darken mode so that I can get a little bit of a shadow. Go back to regular so I can start color picking, putting just some design detail here. Going to go ahead and just kind of define a little bit of the underside. Collapse that. It's funny, I know that once I've collapsed that image that I've committed, you know, and anytime you guys feel, you know, the urge to want to keep everything separate, feel free to keep everything separate and just create a new copy of it, so that way you can make mistakes and just paint on that copy. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of define a little bit of the waist here. Add some more folds. Gonna fix the fold down here. And it's crazy how much my computer chugs. When I'm doing these recordings, I don't know if it's my processor or my video card, but I'm definitely getting a lot of latency. So there's definitely a considerable amount of lag that I was experiencing when I was painting this guy. So maybe just take away, and I just need to, I know the arm is a little long. My anatomy is always, it's always messy at this point, so. But I know that the silhouette still looks good, so I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of refine the silhouette just a little bit more. And I'm thinking I need to just darken the background just a little bit so I can get more punch on the character. So just go ahead and just indicate a little bit of, you know, foliage or, you know, plant life here. I'm thinking maybe this can be the complete opposite, since, you know, the character here, it's darker. I'm deciding that it's going to be dark in the front, so let's just make big broad strokes. And in the back, I'm going to make it lighter. The reason why I did that is because that way you can really see the silhouette of the garment, of that cloak. So I'm just kind of going on top, and I'm using an overlay brush here. Overlay or multiply works for doing just these nice little shadows here. So I'm just kind of glazing in the ground. Go back to multiply and just kind of glaze in a little bit of a darker value and see how that looks. It's a little dark, so I'm just going to pull it back. Maybe go back to soft light. And soft light is a little bit like overlay, but it kind of gives me a little bit of a more sensitive and lighter touch on the mixing of the colors. I'm going to just kind of work in the detail here. I think it just needs a little bit more definition on the background. So I'm going to go ahead and work that in. Maybe just a little bit more light. And so what I'm doing here is I actually locked the layer. So when I paint, I don't paint outside of that layer. I don't paint outside of the silhouette. So I'm able to make these nice, really clean decisions. You know, I'm able to make these clean strokes, these brush strokes, because, you know, one thing is when you have a nice character design, you definitely don't want to make a mark and all of a sudden, you know, it goes off and it becomes like a mess, right? So cleaning up an image can be a pain in the butt sometimes. So I'm trying to give a little bit more detail to the face, but you know, it's just getting a little overworked. So let me just try to see if I can kind of work in a little bit more of an open mask here. And I'm just kind of jumping around, simplifying some areas that need simplifying, you know, where our eye doesn't really need to necessarily go. Just going to quickly just indicate just a little bit of light pings by the boot. Just a little bit more on the shadow there. Alright, now this is where I'm going to start zooming in. Start working on the face just a little bit here. Now you guys notice that in this time I actually haven't zoomed in at all. This was the only time that I've really zoomed in, only because I couldn't work on the face at that size. So what I'm going to decide to do is I'm actually going to zoom out just a little bit, kind of reevaluate the overall sketch, the overall painting, and just see if there's anything I need to do to really help get the character to read just on the upper left side. Pull it back a little bit more. Kind of give the blade a nice shadow side of some sort. And you know what? I'm actually going to pull this back because I realize that this shape of the garment is actually too complex. So I think at this point, you know, taking a step back and just kind of reevaluating, looking at where are the pitfalls? Where does the image look good and where does it suck? You know, because I mean, we're our own worst critic when it comes to, you know, looking at our own artwork, and we're always going to think that everything is bad. But constructively, when I look at this piece, I know that, you know, there's some areas that are working and there's some areas that definitely need a lot more improvement. So I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of see what else I can do here. And I think that on the bottom side here, I might just go ahead and just indicate a little bit of the boot. Go ahead and kind of see what else I can do here. I'm thinking, let's just go ahead and pull some of the stuff, maybe make a new layer. I just want to try something out here. I know that I wasn't too happy with this, and so I don't know if it was the folds or if it was just the shape. So I'm just gonna go ahead and lasso out this piece here because there's something weird about that. It's just creating too much strange and coincidental symmetry. But this right here is working a lot better, I feel. And maybe if I can just shave that part in so I can get a nice shape here. Just more of a simpler read, because before it was like it was just kind of all over the place in terms of just the way the fabric was draping. So I'm just going to try to work in a little bit of folds. Try to get that to work here. It's tough, man. I mean, doing you know, dynamic lighting with with, complex, with complicated materials is really my weak point. So, I mean, I at this point, I'm just kind of deciding to really simplify it, and I'm thinking, you know what? Let's just make this a simple shape. It's not going to be as nearly as cool to have more of a dynamic looking, arrangement of fabric, but at least I know for a fact that this shape, it reads clear and it reads more simple. And sometimes, you need to sacrifice really complicated, nice looking, poses in order to make the image read, in order for me to make the image work. Now, that's just my own personal opinion on when it comes to simplifying. Not all of you guys will agree, but when I kind of get stuck, I notice that I get stuck because I'm dealing with something that I don't know how to resolve. I don't know how to make it better. So, I need to try to find a way to make the image work to my understanding and to my own abilities. Just gonna kind of define a little bit more of this arm guard here. It's more of like this, it's kind of I guess it's more of like a forearm guard, like a wrist guard of some sort. But and I just felt like that maybe I can indicate just a little bit more material here, because everything felt like the same kind of metal. Just gonna kind of break it up just a little bit. Add some more shadow here. Just a little bit more of a defined line. Cut it in just a little bit here. I'm thinking, okay, this is where I'm going to zoom in. Going back to kind of the helmet. Not the helmet, sorry. The mask here. I'm thinking maybe I can just add a little bit of a crease here. Because before it was just kind of falling off. So the part of the face is still kind of bugging me. So let's go ahead and try something where I'm just going to make a lasso selection of this midsection. I'm going to shrink it down and see if I can use that. Just going to stretch it across. And I'm going to make this kind of be the material of my mask. It's a little lazy just because, I definitely didn't paint this. I painted this. I'm just kind of borrowing from my own painting. But you know what? If you have to do that, feel free to do that. I mean, this is your painting. You can do anything you want. But I really wanted to resolve that section, and it was driving me nuts. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to extend this thing and not make it literally look like a miniature version of what I have on my waist. Just going to kind of drop the opacity just a little bit and add to it. Just kind of define the shape, and at least I know for a fact that in terms of a design language, I have something that's somewhat consistent. And already it's starting to kind of work. It's starting to work for me in terms of kind of the readability at this phase. I'm just going to duplicate it and see what I get. Kind of some crazy looking mask, right? See what I get if I just erase away at it. That was kind of cool. I liked it. I just wasn't sure if, maybe the eyes look kind of weird. Just going to paint the top section here. Definitely didn't want it to feel like a robot, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try to break the graphic design of that. Shrink it down just a little bit. And notice how I'm always pulling back, because I want to see the entire character, but also I want to see if it works as an entire image, right? And small little scale changes will really make a huge difference. So I'm just going to turn that off and see how it looks without it on. And to be honest, I kind of like it without it off. With it off. So let's just add a little bit more detail to this guy. Just because, it's kind of this mixture of, some sort of like forged metal. It's like really intricately laid in. Maybe I can have like a nose guard so I can kind of bring that part up. Might be kind of cool. And I'm just going to kind of darken the whole thing because, you know, obviously it's not going to get direct light, but I definitely want the ambient occlusion from the hoodie to kind of help sell the idea that this thing is, it's peeking through the light, but it's definitely in shadow for sure. Gonna pull just a little bit of detail in the eyes and see if I really need it, you know? It might not be necessary, but again, I don't want to throw that idea away before trying it. Work back on the arms a little bit. Maybe a strap or something here. Just try to take that out. It seems like it's getting a little busy. Let me add just a little bit more definition to this thing. Let's see here. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it again, create another third group. And this time, I'm going to use an overlay. I'm going to really try to punch the character out this time. And notice how it darkened it up, and it really kind of draws your eye in. Let's do it again one more time. So I'm going to actually duplicate the background this time and see if I can do the opposite. And it didn't look as good by darkening the background. So I'm going to just try on the other side, see how that looks. And that didn't look good either. So you know what? Let's just go with the darkening of the character in the front. And that feels like the light is rolling off better. And the reason why I decided to do that is because you guys saw just from the way I tested it out, you know, when I had the background darker, it instantly made the character look really flat. Why? The character looked flat because that means that if the background was dark and, you know, the bottom half of the character is already lit, and if the top half of the character is lit, then that means the character is lit overall, right? It's being equally lit, and that's what's making it really flat. So I'm adding a little touch of orange to really pop out the silhouette of the head. And let's just go ahead and add just more details on the background. You know, I didn't want it to be too muddy or too abstract, so I'm just gonna add maybe just a little leaf or something here. Yep, there we go. 1, 2. Maybe just a couple leaves back here. And maybe the ground plane just a little bit. I can just kind of anchor it and just simplify it and just kind of bring just a little bit more light back there. Just gonna glaze it in. And notice when I paint light, I'm not going full 100%. I'm just glazing it in. And all of this is just kind of with the pen pressure, so that way I can just get nice little pockets of light coming in towards the feet. Just gonna glaze that in as well, just so I can get that nice orange seeping through the background there. Let's see here. And that's pretty much about it, guys. So we're coming to an end to our demo, and you know, I really hope that you guys enjoy this demo. If you guys have any comments, please feel free to email me at jpforjohnpark@gmail.com. And for those of you who don't know, you know, this demo was created for my patrons on www.patreon.com/jparked. There'll definitely be more of these series. I'm probably gonna try to do a couple of these per month, and yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.